The American Mafia. Some call it the New York Mafia, others call it the Italian-American Mafia. One thing for sure is, when you think of the Mafia, you think large amounts of money, drugs, and guns, with men suited up, feared but respected amongst the city and country. This reputation comes from the American Mafia. Its origins are quite complicated. Basically, Italians came to New York as immigrants during the 18 and 1900s. They were discriminated against and could not find jobs, so they were forced to make money other ways, organized crime being one of them. People were afraid to act against these groups or go to the police, and they therefore developed a fearsome reputation. As we mentioned, the Mafia in America was started by Italian immigrants who moved to America in the 18 and 1900s. The operations were controlled by gangsters like Lucky Luciano, Albert Mad Hatter Anastasia, Vito Genovese, and Joe Adonis. It was led by Giuseppe Joe the Boss Masseria. They were the strongest and most powerful mob in the US at the time. Soon after, a rival appeared, who went by the name Don Vito Cascioferro, another Italian gangster. He wanted to control the mafia operations and sent Salvatore Maranzano to seize control. The group consisted of famous gangsters such as Joseph Joe Bananas Bonanno, Joseph Profaci, and Joe Aiello. These two groups started to fight over territory, and eventually a gang war broke out known as the Castellammarese War. It was a bloody war that cost both sides heavily. A pivotal point in the war occurred when a member of Masseria's gang, Lucky Luciano, switched sides. Luciano noticed that Masseria had limitations and disadvantages and was thus losing the war. He took this as an opportunity to switch sides and secretly struck a deal with the opposition, Salvatore Maranzano, to engineer the killing of Masseria. Luciano invited Masseria to one of his favorite restaurants. While playing cards, Luciano excused himself to use the bathroom and came back with 4 other men and opened fire on Masseria. At this point, it was declared that Salvatore Maranzano had won the Castellammarese War. The war was named after Maranzano's place of birth, Castellammare del Golfo, a town in Sicily, Italy. Following his victory, Maranzano called a meeting in New York where he reorganized the gangs into 5 families headed by Lucky Luciano, Joseph Profaci, Thomas Gagliano, Vincent Mangano, and himself. The idea was that these 5 families would work together as the Mafia. However, Maranzano declared himself as the boss of bosses, and that all operations and decisions were to be approved by him. This did not sit right with all the other members, and it is believed Luciano was the mastermind that got Maranzano assassinated a few months later. After his murder, Luciano called another meeting in Chicago. He decided not to call himself the boss of bosses, as he believed that the title created trouble. Luciano's goal with these 5 families was to quietly maintain power over all of them without creating gang wars. So he came up with the idea of the commission. It would consist of a board of directors who were the heads of each family. Unlike Maranzano, who stated that everything would be approved by him, Luciano instead suggested that everything be brought forward for the board to discuss and vote fairly. The commission consisted of 7 family bosses at first: Lucky Luciano, Joseph Profaci, Thomas Gagliano, Vincent Mangano, Joseph Joe Bananas Bonanno, Al Capone, and Stefano Mangadino, where Luciano was appointed the chairman of the commission. They operated successfully for around 10 years, but started to fall after the government doubled down on them. The American Mafia is now split into 5 families: Bonanno, Colombo, Gambino, Genovese, and the Lucchese family. The hierarchy of the American Mafia is understandably similar to that of the Italian Mafia. considering the American Mafia was started by Italians. At the top is the boss. This is the head of the family, so to say. He authorizes all operations and is only replaced for two reasons: if he goes to prison or dies. Second in command is his advisor, commonly known as the consigliere. He acts on behalf of the boss when he is not able to attend to matters. Below him is the underboss, who gives orders to the captains and reports back to the boss. Next in the chain of command are the captains, who relay orders to crew members and are in charge of them. The crew members are next on the ranking. They are the ones who carry out the orders sent by the boss. Associates are right at the bottom. These are non-official members of the mafia, like doctors, lawyers, etc. Before someone becomes an official member of the family, they would need to become an associate. How does one become an associate? They are simply associated with someone who is already an official member. In order for an associate to become a made member of the family, they would need to be proposed, in other words, being selected for the team. There are many factors that need to be considered for this to happen. For example, how well do you get along with other members, and can you be trusted? Once you're proposed, a ceremony takes place. The captain who selected you for the team will be there, as well as the boss or underboss. A pistol and knife are on the table during the ceremony, mainly for symbolic reasons. Your trigger finger, the finger you use to shoot, is pricked and your blood is dropped on a picture of a saint. The picture is lit on fire and you move it from one hand to another. This symbolizes an oath that you are taking to you, after which the boss will explain the rules of the life to you as a member of the mafia. Apart from the general rules of a gang, like don't talk to the police or steal from the gang, the American Mafia focuses a lot on the following rules. No member of a family is allowed to touch, escort, or have romantic relationships with members of another family. This was to avoid any unnecessary fights. A member of the mafia should not sue or open lawsuit cases, as this will attract too much attention. Members should not get involved in the stock market, as the IRS could question where the money to invest came from. Targets should be taken out as quietly as possible to avoid public attention. Therefore, something like a bomb should never be used. There is a lot less corruption today than there was back then. In those days, the mob had political influence which they could get through force. They would send associates or members of the family to join the union. Those members would then corrupt the unions, take over the union, and that's how they were able to gain control. They have many different pools of income, such as racketeering, gambling, drug dealing, and prostitution, just to name a few, with each family controlling different territories. The American Mafia is not as powerful as they used to be in the mid-1900s. However, they do still operate. There are now 5 families that control the territories across America. They have different bosses now, but still operate under the same names: Bonanno, Colombo, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese. Remember, the American Mafia was started by Italians who moved to America as immigrants. As a result, the American Mafia works closely with the Italian Mafia as they have similar origins and structures.